Q&A number 8 on June 9th, 2019. And if you're able to see this live recording, go ahead and post your questions in the comment box. I'll be looking at those as we move forward. But I'm going to start with a question that was sent to me first by Jennifer Mitchell. So I'm hoping you guys can still see me. I'm pulling up my other browser here. So Jennifer Mitchell has a couple of questions. Question number 1, I saw level 1 taught her that calcium, cholesterol, and water were three of the body's buffers from acids. Which of those does mucus fall under? Well, mucus is produced by mucus glands, also called goblet cells, which line all of our mucous membranes. We also have mucus cells in the salivary glands as well. And mucus is kind of a mixture of water plus these kind of gelatinous proteins. So the mucus has a couple of different functions in the human body. Mucus helps to trap things. So for instance, the mucus cells lining our respiratory tract trap inhaled particles. So if you inhale something that has particulate matter in it, you definitely don't want that stuff getting down to the gas exchange surfaces called the alveoli in your lungs, because that could interfere with gas exchange, the mechanism of getting oxygen into the blood and releasing carbon dioxide. So the mucus there is meant to trap things that are inappropriate. We also have mucus lining the digestive tract, and like I said, in the salivary glands. In the salivary glands, the mucus is more likely to be secreted in a fight or flight response. Those mucus glands are more under the direction of the sympathetic nervous system there, again, to protect us, to prevent us from swallowing anything or getting anything into our body that's inappropriate. And in the rest of the digestive tract, we have a lot of these goblet cells in the lining of the large intestine, which is helping us to kind of move that fecal material towards the anus. So in the large intestine, we do solidify what is called chyme into feces. And as it becomes more solid, it doesn't travel as easily in the digestive tract, and so the mucus there kind of helps it glide along. So with that said, the normal function of mucus from all of these cells, there does seem to be an increased release of mucus when we are exposed to things that are inappropriate for our being. So for instance, and this kind of reminds me of something I saw today that I want to share, but dairy products are highly mucus forming. So what do we mean by that? Mucus-forming foods are foods that elicit a mucus release response. You may have heard of Dr. Arnold Ehret and his mucusless diet healing system. And I know since Arnold Ehret, other people like Professor Spira have really taken his work and they have run with it. And you can check out Professor Spira's. I know he's on Facebook. He does YouTube videos. But he's a big proponent of Arnold Ehret, and so this mucus is being released really to kind of trap those things that shouldn't be there, and that's kind of alongside what Dr. Morse discusses with regards to the other buffers like calcium, cholesterol, and water. So calcium, cholesterol, and water are trapping things more inside of the body. Whereas the mucous membranes really line tubular structures that have an open way or a passageway out of the body. Like if you think of your digestive tract, mouth to anus, that's just one big long tube going right down the center of your body. And so it's open on both ends. The respiratory tract open, in the nostrils. That's where the respiration begins when we breathe into our nose. Other mucous membranes like the reproductive tracts, they also have openings to the outside of the body. So the mucous membranes are really protecting those regions that have openings to the outside. Where calcium comes into play, cholesterol, and water, That's more inside of the body. So for instance, our blood, or even like, we'll start with the blood. So the blood, when it becomes too acidic, okay, meaning that the pH of the blood has fallen below 7.35, and that's a very dangerous place to be, because when our blood is too acidic, that starts to denature blood proteins, plasma proteins and whatnot. It can also denature things that the blood is passing through. So, we have the bicarbonate system that helps to buffer the blood, but if that bicarbonate system, which can only work to a certain extent, if it is overwhelmed, then we start leaching calcium. And this is where you start seeing the calcified plaques. We see calcified stones in the ureters of the urinary system. Those are the kidney stones people talk about that are very painful. So that calcium was leached out because of the acids, okay? Same thing with cholesterol. Cholesterol is there to kind of put a little Band-Aid on acids that build up inside of the body. We see cholesterol-based plaques and the bad cholesterol going to where we would put these little Band-Aid cholesterol patches on these highly inflamed, highly acidic structures in the body. Even gallstones are more cholesterol-based, and so the liver, as it's releasing its bile through the bile ducts, the various hepatic and bile ducts, all of that gets emptied into the small intestine, but a lot of cholesterol can plaque on to a lot of the acidic chemicals that the liver is constantly trying to handle as blood passes through it. So the water, the cholesterol, the calcium, they're doing what the mucus does, but in just a different area. Okay, so if it's lining the respiratory tract and you're exposed to something that's an irritant, something that you shouldn't be consuming, like dairy products, you're going to have a mucus response. So kind of trap it before it gets into the body. Once it's passed into our bodily fluids, our blood or our lymph, then it's going to deal with one of those other buffers that Dr. Morse talks about. Again, the calcium, the cholesterol, and the water. And just to kind of remind you before I go on to your next question, I was at the grocery store getting some fruit this morning, and I saw right there as I was paying for my groceries, they always have, like, right where you check out, you can donate to this cause. They were asking people to donate to provide dairy products for starving children, for undernourished children, dairy products. That's the last damn thing a starving child needs. I mean, let's get a donation bucket to provide fresh fruit to children, because what better way to heal somebody? I mean, you give this child dairy products and they're just going to get really sick, and then if they're already in a predicament where they live somewhere where they can't afford food, how are they going to afford the medical care, So anyway, I thought that was pretty ridiculous. So let's go to your second question. Again, I'm still answering Jennifer Mitchell's question. Question number 2, when somebody is overweight, why did the body create the fat? What is that body fat, literally? And she goes on, I know the adrenals that fail to produce the steroids can fail to metabolize sugar and hyperthyroidism, which slows the rate of metabolism, but could it also be a lipid buffer? Where does a lipid buffer come into play? Could it happen that the body is so acidic, malnourished, overburdened with items it cannot ingest or digest, that it's agglomerated excess waste elsewhere? I hope the second question with its many questions isn't too complicated to understand. I get what you're going with Jennifer. So excess body fat, what is it? So when somebody is overweight, keep in mind a lot of excess weight that, when you look at somebody and you can see that they're puffy, that they look like they're carrying excess within their body, it's not always fat. It could be a lot of fat, but a lot of it is water. And again, it comes back to those 3 internal buffers that are protecting us against acids. The water, the cholesterol or the fats, okay, and the calcium. So when somebody is really acidic and they're consuming an inappropriate diet of, just junk food, processed food, animal products, cooked foods that have been incredibly denatured, that they look nothing like they look like in their natural state, all of these things entering the body have to be processed, okay, before they can circulate. The liver does a lot of that processing, and the liver becomes overwhelmed. Okay, the liver also handles all of the fats in the body as well. So these fats start to buffer, and they're going to try to prevent those things that are toxic from doing too much harm in the body. Water tends to accumulate in those areas as well, again, to buffer, to protect. The water, the swelling tends to seal off certain areas, again, so that things can't travel and do as much harm. Like, it's harder to run in a pool than it is on land. So in a fluid environment, things aren't moving as well. So that's how the water is used. So a lot of times, when I put clients on a fruit-based diet, if I'm dealing with somebody and they're struggling with a chronic issue that allopathy has not been able to help them with, I tell them, do nothing but fruit for a couple of weeks. I mean, it's not going to hurt anybody. And as an ISOD graduate that you are, Jennifer, you know this. But when people go on 100% fruit for, let's say, 2 weeks in a row, let's say they're doing nothing but the water-rich grapes or the citrus or the lemons, what are they mostly doing? Well, those astringent fruits are pulling a lot of the stuff out, and water's following it, okay? Water osmotically follows the water that was buffering those acids as we pull it all out into our lymphatic system and into the blood, and as it goes out through these bodily fluids, it's all filtered out at the kidneys. And so a lot of times people lose a lot of weight. I mean, I have clients that will lose in a week or two like 20 pounds. And it's all water weight. They're peeing a lot, and it's all getting flushed out of their system. Okay? That water was kind of puffing up the tissues, making them look like they were overweight. Now, they might have some adipose tissue as well, which adipose tissue is what we commonly call fat. And that will be consumed as well. I think doing some mini fasts, water fasts are great because, I'm not a big fan of the ketogenic diet, so I'm not going there. I'm just talking about ketosis with regards to water fasting. In my opinion, water fasting is the healthiest way to put the body into a state of ketosis. And when you're in a state of ketosis, what you never want to do long term, you do it short term. Because when you're in a ketotic state, when you're creating a lot of ketone bodies, those are acids, and they will slightly lower the pH of your bodily fluids, but it's going to burn up some of that excess fat, which could be trapping, again, acidic, toxic waste products. So all of that's getting removed. So you're flushing the body with fruits, and maybe you do a 3 to 4 day water fast. Do that every so often. And you'll see both the water weight and the fat being lost by those two ways that we buffer these acidic waste products in the body. So, so Jennifer, that's what basically excess weight is. It's usually water and fat. There could be some calcified plaques. The calcified plaques, though, are so hard, and they tend to be they form more dense bodies within various organs and tissues. Sometimes you can feel them, like you can feel like in your skin, you might feel like a hard knot. That's usually a calcified substance that's trapping something. And a lot of these things, again, dissolve away as we start to cleanse, as we start to introduce appropriate foods and get rid of the nonsense. So wonderful questions, Jennifer. I'm going to go to the next question, and this was from Paige Foran. So Paige writes, she just finished watching one of the QAs. Let's see. And she asked if I announce these. So Paige, every Sunday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, I will be doing these live Q&As. But she did post some questions for me for this one. What is the connection between parathyroid gland and calcium utilization and depression? And is it that calcium is needed for nerve conduction, the nervous system, and making neurotransmitters? So for your first question on page, actually in my last Q&A last Sunday, we talked about this, but I'll repeat it again because it never hurts hearing this information again. So calcium and parathyroid hormone. So parathyroid hormone, its job in the body is to raise blood calcium levels when they become too low. So when our blood calcium levels drop, usually they drop because that calcium is being used to buffer acidic waste products that have accumulated somewhere. But the parathyroid gland helps to put more calcium into the blood. And that maintains calcium homeostasis. And not that you need to know this, but we should have anywhere from 8.5 to 11 milligrams of calcium per deciliter of blood. So if we fall out of that range, if we fall too low, parathyroid hormone is released. If we actually go too high, calcitonin coming from the thyroid gland is released. So both your thyroid and parathyroid, which are right here in your neck, they are the hormones, or they are the glands that control blood calcium levels. So with that said, calcium's function with regards to the nervous system and depression. Calcium is needed to help the neurons, which are our nerve cells, to release neurotransmitter. So neurons are electrically excitable cells. They transmit electrical signals down their length, and when the electrical signal gets to the end of the neuron, that's where the neuron releases a neurotransmitter, which then stimulates another neuron, or it might stimulate a muscle, or it might stimulate a gland. So it's telling something to do something. And so that's how the nervous system plays a role in communication. To release that neurotransmitter, we need calcium. Calcium comes in and it causes exocytosis, which is the release of the vesicles storing that neurotransmitter out into the synaptic cleft. So if we are calcium deficient and we don't have that calcium coming in to trigger the release of the neurotransmitter, then you don't get that communication. And those are going to be associated with being somewhat depressed. There are many many neurotransmitters that can affect depression, and many of them are controlled by, in the allopathic world, by psychotropic drugs, like various antidepressants that affect things like norepinephrine or serotonin. So you have SSRIs, SSRNIs. So they're trying to keep these neurotransmitters active in the synaptic cleft. But really what we need is, healthy amounts of calcium to allow that neurotransmitter to naturally be released. But you also need the neurotransmitter to be produced. So there's always a lot of other things involved with depression, but calcium does play a big role. And oftentimes, if you can get your parathyroid gland to up its function, so sometimes we recommend a parathyroid glandular for that, or the endocrine balance herbal formula is also wonderful to help strengthen all of the endocrine glands. But if we can get those glands on board and they're modifying, in this case, the levels of calcium in the blood, we'll have that calcium we need to make sure that it's physiologically capable to keep the nervous system running correctly. So coming to your next question, Dr. Morris mentions that taking B12 suppresses the thyroid gland. And I did not look at this video, so she mentioned the video, but vitamin B12 suppresses the thyroid gland, and what's the connection there? Well, vitamin B12, I don't recall that video, and maybe after this Q&A is over, I'll look into it and see what Dr. Morris specifically has to say about that. But from what I know about what Dr. Morris has mentioned about vitamin B12, vitamin B12 is commonly the vitamin, one of the B vitamins that helps with our metabolism. It's needed for a lot of different metabolic activities in the body. Like there are even cases where if there's a vitamin B12 deficiency, certain diseases would be diagnosed. Like with a vitamin B12 deficiency, we would have pernicious anemia, which is anemias when there are too few red blood cells. And we know vitamin B12 is very necessary to help with red blood cell production. But it really helps with metabolism across the board. So B12 helps with metabolism. The thyroid gland helps with metabolism. So naturally what we want is we want to create a scenario where we don't have to take any supplements. We want nature to provide for us everything we need. We know that if we have healthy gut bacteria, certain B vitamins can be produced by the natural microflora that line our intestinal tract. And when they produce these B vitamins for us, we can reabsorb some of them back into our blood, and that's one mechanism. So am I recommending that people take probiotics? No, what I'm recommending is that you get your tissues back in order so that you create the correct culturing medium to attract the healthy bacteria in your gut that would do this for us. Again, we're aligning with nature. We're not trying to supplement anything. We're just trying to help the body do what it would do naturally. So I don't know if there is a direct connection with B12 and the thyroid gland other than the fact that they both help with metabolism. I mentioned the thyroid gland playing a role in calcium homeostasis, but it also secretes thyroid hormone, which affects our metabolism. Thyroid hormone has receptors on the heart, so heart rate goes up. But overall, thyroid helps with metabolic function. So a lot of times when people feel like their metabolism's down, they take B12, and perhaps what Dr. Morse was getting to, that they really should be focusing on the thyroid gland and maybe doing some upper circ formula, doing the thyroid herbal formula, always doing a kidney and bladder and a lymphatic formula, really to cleanse and strengthen this gland instead of doing the B12 supplementation. So that could be what he was referring to there, but I will check out that video since you timestamped it. The third question, Dr. Morse also said that when the adrenals go down, breathing can be affected because of the connection between the autonomic nervous system and the adrenals. Are there any details that you can clarify this more? So yeah, so the adrenal glands have two main parts. Two main layers. The outer layer of the adrenal gland is called the adrenal cortex. The inner layer is called the adrenal medulla. The adrenal medulla is a part of the sympathetic nervous system, which is one of the two branches of the autonomic nervous system. So in essence, the adrenal medulla is part of the autonomic nervous system. So when that sympathetic branch, when that sympathetic division is in control, and by the way, the sympathetic nervous system is also called the fight or flight system. It's going to kick you into getting ready to flee from danger or to fight your way out of danger, okay? And so sometimes when the adrenal glands are overstimulated and, typically when you're in a fight or flight response, breathing should be a little bit easier, okay? We get adrenaline release or epinephrine release, also norepinephrine release. And typically these neurotransmitters / hormones, because they function as both depending on their location, will help to dilate the airways, okay? But if the adrenal glands are down, if the adrenal glands can't do this function, we can't dilate the airways, and the airways maybe become more constricted. And oftentimes what causes bronchoconstriction, the constriction of those airways, especially in individuals that are more susceptible to it, is histamine. And histamine, vasoconstricts, bronchoconstricts. So, people take antihistamines, but really what you need to do is you need to cleanse your body, because the release of histamine is often triggered by usually an irritant or some sort of agent that shouldn't be in the body, that the body's trying to protect itself. So a lot of times what the body does is it's always trying to protect itself from something which shouldn't be there. So we have to ask ourselves, instead of suppressing the function of what we would naturally do to get rid of, to protect ourselves, why not, well, let's instead not consume things we shouldn't be consuming, or exposing our body to things we shouldn't be exposed to. So that's kind of the connection between the lungs, the autonomic nervous system, and the adrenal glands. But it is true, when the adrenals are down, people do have a hard time catching their breath. They feel like their chest is tight. I know when I was going through a very stressful, in early May, I was going through a lot of stress in my life. And I was feeling it in my chest. And I knew my adrenals had really hit kind of a roadblock. And it was because I didn't have that adrenal medulla strength to help counter that. So, hi, Bill. I'm seeing some people coming into the chat room. So Sarah's here. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Amy. Hi, Guhara. And hello, Bill. But yeah, the adrenals can take a big hit when you're stressed, and that can affect breathing. That can affect your whole physiology, because what the adrenal glands do is when they secrete these hormones into the blood, it affects us systemically. And the adrenal glands are highly connected with how well we're able to adapt to breathing and stress. So great questions, Paige, and I hope I answered those for you. I'm going to go back to the other question. So Darren asked a question about sunscreen. So I'll just read the whole thing. He says, hi, Patty, I hope you're well. It's just a quick question. He was on holiday, and he was going to put a couple of hours each day into the sun to make some vitamin D. And just to stop there for a second, it is true we produce our own vitamin D when we get natural sun exposure. We need healthy skin, healthy liver, and healthy kidneys, as well as parathyroid hormone, though, to fully produce vitamin D. So it's not just a skin thing. If your other organs, like I just mentioned, aren't healthy, that could also impact your ability to produce vitamin D. But going on with Darren's question. And then he goes on, he didn't want to overdo the sun exposure, and he was thinking about using coconut oil to protect himself. And he writes that he understands that coconut oil only protects to SPF 4, but he might benefit more from SPF 30. So, yeah, I think, and then he went into some other things. So, yeah, coconut oil and sunscreen. So here's the thing about coconut oil. I've used coconut oil in the past, and I don't know if it's necessarily a natural sunscreen. A lot of the oils, they are really good at healing the skin after you've had sun exposure. So if you've had, a slight sunburn or anything like that, aloe vera is wonderful on the skin. You can just rub it onto the burnt area. If you have Dr. Morse's skin burn salve, that's also wonderful. Actually, the skin burn salve is amazing for burns. I mean, even like I've burnt myself on the stove and put that stuff on there, and it heals that tissue so beautifully. And it's an herbal formula, and it's a salve. But coconut oil, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a really good sunscreen. I think that, it's one of those things. Well, taking it back a step, what is a sunburn? A sunburn is when the sun hits our skin and it's causing inflammation in the dermis and the epidermis, which are our two main layers in our skin. Why is it triggering inflammation? Well, it's because in those tissues, again, we have congestion that's trapping metabolic waste. And those are the things that are going to be kind of feeling the burn and creating the inflammatory state. To have inflammation, and inflammation has 4 cardinal signs: redness, swelling, heat, and pain. And you get all of those with a sunburn. Your skin turns red, it becomes a little swollen, it's painful to the touch, and if you feel it, it feels pretty warm. So you're creating inflammation in your skin. So what you want to do is get to a state where your body's not prone to becoming inflamed. And so you want to remove those irritants. So you have to detoxify, okay? Now I know Dr. Morse is not a big fan on supplements, okay? But every now and then for clients, I do recommend that they might get their vitamin D levels checked. And if they're low, supplement with it for a while until you're in a state where you're really cleansed and you know you can put your body out in the sun, get exposure, and you won't burn. All right? So it's true that, you know, humans, we're meant to be in the sun. We're meant to have the sun hit our beautiful skin, to, you know, take in the healing power of the sun. I mean, the sun is our ultimate source of energy on this planet. The sun hits the plants, we consume the plants, so, you know, it's the whole circle of energetic life. And so we're meant to have sun exposure. But unfortunately, with our current society, with the foods we're eating, we eat so much crap and it gets trapped in all of our interstitial spaces. And all of this trapped nonsense then is going to create inflammation. And that's why we get sunburn. So it's not a question of what can I put on my skin to protect me. It's what can you take out of your interstitial spaces to protect you. And that's where we need to begin. So if you are concerned about vitamin D, and if you've had your vitamin D levels checked and they're low, I mean, vitamin D is critically important as a vitamin. We produce it ourselves. But again, to produce vitamin D, which its active form is called calcitriol, we need healthy skin, we need a healthy liver, and we need healthy kidneys. We also need to make sure our parathyroid glands are secreting enough parathyroid hormone, because really the production of vitamin D requires parathyroid hormone targeting the kidneys, and it helps with the last step in the active formation of vitamin D. And then what does vitamin D do? Well, vitamin D is needed for calcium absorption. We need vitamin D to get the calcium in our food products absorbed into our blood. If you don't have enough vitamin D, it doesn't matter how much calcium you're taking in. You may be eating all of the calcium-rich foods in the world. Without vitamin D, you can't get it into your blood, okay? So we need vitamin D for that. There's a lot of studies that correlate low levels of vitamin D with a lot of different chronic diseases as well. And if you look at the areas of the world where they don't get a lot of sun exposure, a lot of those chronic diseases are more common. So we do need vitamin D. And like I said, I know Dr. Morse is not a big fan of supplementation, but I know sometimes Dr. Morse has recommended that people have taken vitamin D. And I know some of his glandular products do have vitamin D mixed in. So I don't think he's 100% against vitamin D supplementation, but, you know, we take it on a case-by-case basis. And if a patient, or not a patient, if a client, because we are not licensed naturopaths, Dr. Morris and myself, we are not regulated by any ruling body, so that we don't have to have our hands tied to tell the truth, because that's really important. But with that said, you know, when we're dealing with clients and we think that they need vitamin D supplementation, we'll do that. So to answer your question, Darren, what I would do to protect your skin is I would wear light clothing, you know, long sleeve, like a loose woven, light white shirt to protect your skin in the sun while you're on vacation. And that will prevent sunburning if you know that you might not be completely cleansed, or if you've had a history of any kind of skin cancer or anything like that, where you know that you are maybe more genetically predisposed to things like that. You can always take a look at your iris. Do you have a skin ring? Do you know that your skin may be a little bit more challenged? So iridology is a wonderful way to kind of assess the body. How well is it able to manage these types of environments? So Darren, that was a wonderful question, and I appreciate you posting that. And I just want to make sure I answered all of his questions. I think I did. Okay. So thank you, Darren. Stephen writes about what's best for teeth cleaning, baking soda. Is that the best choice? Are there other products? What might they be? Thank you. All right, Stephen. So for your teeth, to maintain healthy teeth, baking soda is not terrible. But you know, when you use it too often, I think like anything, it can be a little bit irritating. So you don't want to use a lot of baking soda. What I like to use is Dr. Morse's herbal tooth formula, which I actually just used it. I'll just run and grab it really quick. It's just in my bathroom. 1 second. I just looked outside and my puppy completely destroyed her dog bed. Oh, she'll be in timeout. Okay, so what I like to use for my teeth, and this one's kind of the thing's kind of messed up, but this is Dr. Morse's herbal tooth and gum powder. I think Dr. Sebi has one just like it, or a similar formula, because I had his before I worked with Dr. Morse, and I actually got this from when I was working down in Florida with Dr. Morse. When this product first came out, they gave all of the employees working at his clinic, you know, a sample, which is always nice of them. And so I use this, and sometimes I do a couple of other things for my teeth as well. But the best way I use this is with coconut oil. So I take my toothbrush and I put a little bit of coconut oil on the toothbrush, and then I sprinkle this on top of the coconut oil, and that kind of holds it because it is a powder. It's not like a paste like we're used to, but you just kind of sprinkle it on. And then maybe on top of that, I might add a drop of peppermint oil just to kind of freshen my breath. If you're dealing with a tooth infection, you can maybe add a little bit of clove, which is a natural way to heal, you know, the gums and whatnot. And, you know, just brush yourself. Now, it will turn your teeth brown, but this stuff, I think, contains baking soda in it. Yeah, it has a little bit of baking soda, white oak bark, or white oak bark powder, comfrey root, and leaf, plantain leaf. So there's some really good herbs in here. So that's what, you know, I think is wonderful for cleansing the teeth, because it's actually cleansing it, helping to kind of remove that plaque on the surface, but it's also really healthy for the gums as well. And, you know, oil pulling is great. You know, I do that every morning. I just take about a tablespoon of oil, of coconut oil, or any oil will do. But there are some oils that are better than others. I add a little bit of clove and peppermint oil, and then I just swish it in my mouth. Actually, every morning when I'm making the food for my dogs, I swish this stuff in my mouth. And by the time I'm done getting their food ready, it's time to spit that stuff out. And after I spit out the coconut oil, and that, you know, that's oil pulling, that's what they call it, then I swish my mouth with like some warm salt water, and that kind of removes all the oil. So that's my morning dental hygiene routine. And I do keep on hand a couple of the fluoride-free toothpaste. Every now and then I just like doing it the old-fashioned way. So coming back to the questions, I think that was it, actually. So those were all of the questions that were emailed to me. So are there any questions for those of you, I think I'm down to 2 views right now. Are there any questions for those of you that are watching that you have for me to answer? So let me answer Sarah's question. My naturopath recommended me to take probiotics after colon hydrotherapy. And then she asked, is quinoa alkaline? So probiotics, okay, so here's the thing. Natural hygiene is a field of health that basically states that we should not take any supplement, that the body, when it's in a state of health, it should have everything it needs. Meaning that if we're consuming a species appropriate diet, if we're eliminating all the junk, all the nonsense, we shouldn't have to take those good bacteria, because the diet we consume will attract the appropriate bacteria, the appropriate gut flora. And those gut flora, the microbiome, have a lot of benefits. They, first and foremost, prevent pathogenic organisms from inhabiting our intestinal tract, which is why when people take broad spectrum antibiotics. It wipes all of those good bacteria out. And what's one of the side effects of being on antibiotic therapy? You have tummy aches, right? You feel sick, you feel nauseous. That's because those bad guys are taking up residence where the good guys got killed off, along with everything else. Those healthy gut bacteria help to ferment cellulose and a lot of other undigested carbohydrates. They produce some vitamins, the B vitamins, biotin, vitamin K, which we then reabsorb and we can utilize. They do some conversions, so the bilirubin that is in our bile gets converted into uro and stercobilins. The stercobilins is what contributes to the brown color of feces, and the urobilins contribute to the yellow color of urine that's reabsorbed back into the blood as well. So anyway, with all of that said, these healthy bacteria physiologically are doing good things for us. But those are the bacteria that should be there that are associated with us consuming a healthy diet. So let's assume that you're coming to a place where you're working with me or another naturopath or detoxification specialist, and you know you've got some healing to do, and you haven't gotten any benefit from your other healthcare professionals. So you want to try something different. And we put you on a cleanse. And we're trying to help your body get rid of the stuff that shouldn't be there. And then you go on a rebuilding protocol where you're, eating different foods to rebuild. And they're not really that different from the cleansing foods, to be honest with you. But in those early stages, you may not be at a place where you have those good, healthy gut bacteria. And part of a detoxification program includes colon cleansing. So typically, Dr. Morris and myself, we recommend doing something like the GI Broom and taking a stomach and bowels formula. You can do some enemas. We don't recommend them too often. You can do a colonic. Again, we don't recommend them too often because they're stressing, the colon wall a little bit. But yeah, they can, affect those healthy gut bacteria. But colonics and enemas are only affecting the large intestine, not really the small intestine. And there are healthy bacteria in both components. So, maybe initially you can do some of those supplements, but would I recommend them when you're in a healthy state? You don't need them. You won't need them. Is quinoa alkaline? I think when it comes to the grains, it's probably the most alkaline of the grains, but it's still a grain, and grains aren't necessarily detoxifying. So, one thing I like to tell people, there's a big difference between detoxifying foods and foods that you can have every now and then that aren't that bad. And I would put quinoa in the latter category. I enjoy quinoa. I add quinoa to a variety of dishes. It's good to mix things up. But if I'm trying to heal and detoxify, I'm going to say no to all of the grains because they're not going to be cleansing. Then Sarah writes, I want herpes to be dormant. What should I do, or is something that you can suggest to me? When you say stay dormant, I'm not sure if you're talking about oral or genital herpes, but both of them can be triggered by a couple of different things. They are typically triggered by stress. And usually when everybody has, I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people have these virals. They enter your body casually. I mean, a lot of these viral agents enter the body when the culturing medium invites them. And for a lot of viruses, they really like the denatured proteins that are, stuck in our interstitial spaces. They latch on, and then that's kind of what triggers them to enter your body. So if you want to get rid of these viral agents that are, relapsing and triggering, in the case of herpes, it's very similar to the varicella virus, which causes chickenpox. It causes these painful, itchy sores, and usually they're close to the area where the virus initially made contact in the body. So oral, it's going to be in the mouth area, genital, in the genital regions. So you need to cleanse, you need to detoxify. So, do a cleansing protocol. Get on the 14-week protocol that Dr. Morse recommends, that he has on his website. You can also order that through my website. I give some discounts for the first couple of kits if anybody's interested. And you can work with a detoxification specialist as well to kind of create a protocol that's really more specific for you. So that might be helpful. But when the lesions, the sores are active and they're there and they're painful, I would make a poultice with Heal All Tea. So Heal All Tea is something Dr. Morse sells. It's a wonderful blend of loose leaf herbs and roots and to make this tea. And you make it and then you put it in like a little cheesecloth and just directly apply it to the lesions and just leave it there. I have a couple of clients that I've worked with that have had, I think both of them, genital herpes, and I've just recommended that they put that directly on the lesion, and that will help to, it does have some astringent properties where it's kind of helping to pull that congestion out that's trapping and keeping the virus active. So Sarah also writes, I've lost a lot of pounds and my skin is very shaggy, and what should I do to have my skin back the way it used to be? So loose skin, that's parathyroid, and calcium. So calcium, we mentioned earlier with one of the questions that I had that someone had asked through email, calcium's needed to help the neurons pass neurotransmitter to the next cell. So the neurons can't function very well without enough calcium. Calcium also is needed to help create firmness in our organs and tissues. We know it's structurally important, obviously, in the bones, because our bone matrix, our bone tissue, is mostly calcium salts with some collagen fibers. But calcium helps to maintain tissue strength as well. So tissues become loose, they lose their regular position, and why is the calcium not there to help those tissues maintain that position? Why was the calcium taken out of the tissue wall? Probably because the body is so acidic, it's leaching calcium out of these tissues. And when the calcium is leached out, then you get prolapsed organs, sagging skin, very thin, flimsy fingernails. A lot of these are associated with that, okay? So what I would recommend is consuming some calcium-rich foods, going on a detox first and foremost to remove the acidic things in your body that are leaching the calcium. So you need to take care of that. But while you're doing that, we can kind of help to add some good sources of calcium. Dr. Morse's Superfood 2 blend, which is one of his green powder formulas, has a lot of the calcium-rich components in it. It's also rich in a lot of the B vitamins too, so it's a great formula. And I like to mix those kind of green powders into my smoothies. I typically take a smoothie with me to work every day when I go teach. And Superfood 2 is B vitamin rich, so it's giving me energy. It's calcium rich, so it's rich in other minerals as well. And if you take that alongside a parathyroid glandular, so glandulars are something that you do need a naturopath or a detoxification specialist to okay for you, because they're a little bit more powerful than the herbal blends, and it's good to have somebody that's knowledgeable in how these glandulars work make a more educated recommendation. So the parathyroid glandular, we would look at your health questionnaire, and do you have other types of symptoms that would benefit from a glandular? And I typically couple parathyroid glandular either with Superfood 2 or with Dr. Morse's bone and connective tissue formula. And so it's good to have a calcium-rich formula while you're taking that glandular so that the calcium's there to be utilized correctly. And with time, you'll see everything tighten back up again, and your skin won't look as flabby, and it will take on a better shape. Mel joined. Hello, Mel. Sarah also writes about calcium. What should I take? So Superfood 2 is great. Bones and connective tissue, that's another great herbal formula that's calcium rich. But calcium is in a lot of fruits and vegetables. You can just do a Google search and look for calcium-rich fruits and vegetables. I mean, dates have calcium. Dates aren't quite cleansing, but you know, calcium as a mineral, even though in the fruits it's not as highly present as it is in certain vegetables, like a lot of the green, leafy, dark vegetables, kale, Swiss chard, those are very calcium rich. So you can make like a green juice, which would be really great with those greens in particular. I always add a couple of apples to my green juices just because I can't do 100% greens. I'll have to have a little bit of fruit to kind of make it palatable. So yeah, which fruits are calcium rich? You know, I will just put here calcium rich fruits. Okay, so the fruits high in calcium. This is from a website. I'll just put this website into the comment box so that you have it as a reference. But the 10 fruits high in calcium include oranges and tangerines, which I love oranges. I've been doing an orange smoothie almost every day this whole month. Dried apricots, kiwi, dates, dried figs, rhubarb, prickly pears, prunes, mulberries, and kumquats. So I think oranges and tangerines took the #1 position though. So even if you want to stick with just fruit, you can get good sources of calcium from fruit, and I would just add a superfood to that. And you have superfood too, so wonderful. Hello, Wayne. Hi, Mel. So any other questions for me? I've answered all the questions that were emailed to me already, and I can stick around a little bit longer if anybody has anything else they want to go over with me or have questions about. I was on Mark Passio's show today as a call-in, and we talked about vaccinations. And if you guys aren't aware of Mark Passio, he's a great resource to really, I mean, if you're going to detoxify and heal your body, you're getting onto this path of natural health, you should look into natural law, which is really the health of society. It's the universal laws that we're all truly governed by that help us live in a state of peace. And you know, there's not always going to be peace in our life, but as a society, we shouldn't have all of these overbearing rules that govern us, that control us, that create a lot of complexities in our life that we really don't need. And a lot of these complexities create stress, and stress affects our health. So I always like to tell people to look into Mark Passio's work. He does a call-in show on Sundays as well. Well, he does really a live presentation, and then he takes live callers after the presentation. Today, he was just basically taking callers based on his show last week, and it was on right living. And so jobs that are considered virtuous, jobs that people do, and are they benefiting life on this planet, or are they causing harm to life on this planet? So that's one thing to look at. You know, a lot of us that come to this field of natural health and we're cleaning our own bodies up, we become inspired. The healthier we get, we want to do things to create more abundance in the world. And you know, it can be career changing for a lot of us. So if there aren't any questions, I might wrap it up. We're at about an hour. I appreciate all of the people that hopped on the live Q&A and asked some wonderful questions. I appreciate all of you being here today. Sarah wrote, I have a little infection in my right eye. What do you recommend to heal it? Well, if you have eye health, which is, again, another one of Dr. Morse's formulas, that can be beneficial. But really for cleansing the eyes, just, I don't know, there are some, like eye bright's a great herb. There are a couple of herbs that can be beneficial. I guess I need to know a little bit about the eye infection. I guess it's more superficial. Is it creating redness in your eyes? Meg Michelle, hello. She writes, experiencing hair loss with medication, but was losing hair before that. What natural product might help? I sometimes use biotin. Biotin is one of the B vitamins. Really, hair loss is, and if the medication was causing hair loss, it could have been creating this as well. But if you were having this before the medication, you were probably already there. But when you have acidosis in the skin where your hair is growing, that can affect the growth of the hair. So you really need to cleanse this part of your body. A cleansing diet will be very helpful, and going on a detox protocol will be really helpful. But one thing I warn people about is when they start a cleanse, sometimes as we're breaking down the congestion in the tissues of our scalp and we're releasing all of that, sometimes the unhealthy hair follicles will release that hair. And so you might go through a phase where you experience some more hair loss before really good healthy hair grows back. And that's just part of the cycle, that we have to get rid of the old, get rid of that which is not healthy, which shouldn't be there, and then that allows us to grow in healthy tissue, nice, strong hair. So any cleansing protocol, well, the protocol that I recommend will help you get rid of the congestion. But the herbs that I would recommend alongside that, upper circulation, brain and nerve, those are wonderful. Obviously a kidney and bladder formula, a lymphatic formula, a stomach and bowel, because you always want to keep the bowels cleansed and strengthened. So that's what I would recommend for you, Meg, with the hair loss. Sarah writes, it's a red spot in the middle of your eye. Is it on the iris actually, or the white of the eye? But the eye health formula from Dr. Morse, you can get a little eye cup, and you boil off the alcohol of the eye health formula, take the herbal formula after the alcohol has been boiled off, and then just kind of tilt it back and blink your eyes, and that will help to kind of cleanse that area. If there is anything irritating the eye, that will help draw that out so those irritants are gone. Let's see. Oh, it's on the eyelid, so it's like a little sty. Oh, I thought it was on the eyeball itself. Okay, thank you for clarifying that, Stara. So styes, you can just take some heal all tea and make a compress, right? A little compress, and put it right on there. That will help draw it out. Or if you have a little bit of heal all salve, be careful with the salve there, because you're right there by the eyeball. You don't want to get that in there. But the compress might be a little bit better. So if you have heal all tea, just get some gauze, soak it in the tea, and just put that right on top of that sty. And that will help to kind of loosen that up, because that sty is usually hard, inflamed tissue, and it will break that down a little bit. And then cleanse it at the same time. All right, everybody, any other questions before I log off? Well, it's been great chatting with you all this evening. And coming back to, what were we talking about, Mark Passio or my A&P course? I can't remember. My online A&P course is available, though. I've tried to make it incredibly affordable for you all. So if you're interested in learning about how the human body works, you can take the same college level course that I teach to my own human anatomy and physiology students. But then also, I think I was talking about Mark Passio and natural law. So if you're inspired to live a life of natural health, living according to the laws of nature that govern our physical health, look at how the laws of nature govern our society. And perhaps you are being governed and controlled and manipulated and programmed. So check out Mark Passio's work. I will put his website in the comment box. What on earth is happening? And you can check all of his live broadcasts as well as his previous broadcasts. I consider Mark Passio and Dr. Morris two of my primary mentors and people that I look up to and gain information from. I think both of these men are incredibly capable of really knowing what the true problems are. Dr. Morris with our health, Mark Passio with the state of humanity and life on this planet and why we're in the chaotic state we are in with all of the wars, with taxation, with poverty. I mean, it doesn't have to be like this. We should not be having these problems on this planet. These are man-made problems and we need to stop this because it's creating stress in our physical health as well, and it's destroying beauty. It's destroying life. So anyway, thank you all for showing up. I'm going to end this live recording. I hope you all have a great week, and please post your questions to questions@PattyLoggerND. If anything within the next week comes up or while you're watching the recording of this and you would like me to address it, especially if you're not able to make the live Q&A. All right, have a great week, and I will see you next week, same time, 6 p.m. Sundays, Central Standard Time. Bye.